Remember, let us know your thoughts on the content of this video. Do you agree or disagree? And what solutions are you implementing? Is there enough evidence out there to show that a good amount of white people will fight white supremacy until it's undefeated? Is there enough evidence out there to show that a good amount of white people will fight white supremacy until it's defeated? That remains to be seen. However, with the way the country is heading politically and socially, whites may have to get together to fight white supremacy. Why is it important to acknowledge that there are some whites who are fighting white supremacy? Have we as blacks become so comfortable with critiquing white society that we have become blind to those lending a hand? Will you unite with whites, or do you feel that whites should fight white supremacy on their own? Are whites fighting against their ancestors' crimes that were committed against humanity and the benefits that came along with it? Is this just a trend, or are whites in this for the long haul? And what do you feel are the real reasons for whites suddenly uprising against white supremacy? 5 reasons why white people will fight and defeat white supremacy. Number 5. White people are finally getting tired of white supremacy. With the sudden rise in the internet and social media to ignore the genocide caused by their ancestors globally. Tim Wise, Jane Elliott, Southern Poverty Law Center, and showing up for racial justice are just some of the ways white people are taking a stand against white supremacy. The owner of the LA Clippers, the Atlanta Hawks owner, were both forced to resign, and the mayor of West Virginia was fired for her comments against Michelle Obama. This is how the tolerance for racism among whites has grown smaller. Even if certain white people do not want to fight white supremacy, the portrayal or exposure of being racist is something that many are shunning away from. However, there is the Donald Trump winning the election issue. In conclusion, some whites are beginning to somewhat develop a culture of morals that being racist can smear a good reputation, at least in the eyes of the public. Of course, this only means that some racist whites will find other covert means to express their racism by white nationalist or other neo-Nazi ideologies. Whites speaking out against Trump's antics and protesting his inauguration further shows the distaste for racism. While white silence still exists, some whites are exposing and shaming those who try to hide their racist ideologies. Number 4. Interracial dating. It is important for black men and women who marry interracially that they choose a spouse that understands the concept of racism and white supremacy. They will have to teach their children about racism as well. White spouses will have to come to a point where they will have to join in on their significant other's fight against white supremacy. At some point, interracial dating will reach second and third generations on a wide scale. 20 years ago, interracial dating was taking place, but whites discussing white supremacy publicly was unheard of compared to today. With social media, it's easier than ever to find minds who think alike. This means somewhere down the line, whites who understand white supremacy will begin to attract blacks who understand white supremacy, creating the possibility of love relationships. While interracial couples may feel cornered by blacks and whites alike who may not approve of their relationship, interracial couples may have a foundation of fighting white supremacy as their relationship, uniting them for a lifelong cause that will outlive them for generations. As interracial couples become more involved together in fighting white supremacy, this may begin to eliminate the stigma of being a sellout for marrying outside your race. For this term is used because generally, when a black person marries outside their race, they tend to forget about helping out the black community, whether by slander from black people or them not really caring in the first place. In conclusion, it is important that in interracial relationships that the black person educates their significant other on Black history and modern-day white supremacy. If your relatives are uncomfortable or shaming you for interracial dating, an understanding of white supremacy could possibly already explain these actions from close family members. If whites feel isolated by family members for dating outside their race, then you have nothing to lose by fighting white supremacy anyway. Also, whites who have an understanding of white supremacy should not feel ashamed to confront their significant other if they refuse to acknowledge white supremacy as a Black person if the situation presents itself. Number 3. Money has no color. Making money off Black culture. White businessmen have mastered making money off Black culture and talent. These include but are not limited to arenas where Black people stereotypically dominate, such as music and sports. You have very few Black agents and independent artists, but the major record labels are white-owned, as are the sports teams. Even in Hollywood, white directors and producers greenlight some of the major Black history films, the most recent being Hidden Figures, a film about 3 Black women who served as the brains behind the launch of astronaut John Glenn. More films include the Jackie Robinson bio 42, the award-winning film The Help. This is not to question their intentions, but how can whites who have never lived the Black experience have creative control over how Blacks tell their Black experience? Furthermore, any independent Black-owned label from the 90s has had to get distribution from a white-owned company at some point. No matter how independent we may think we are, somewhere down the line, a white-owned company is going to get a cut. In conclusion, we have yet to see a Black director make a film about white history. If we are wrong, please leave a comment below with the title of the film and the director. Even during the peak of white oppression, whites were making money off of Blacks in sports and entertainment during the first half of the 20th century. Subconsciously, whites in the entertainment industry can see the division in the Black community and know that they won't be held accountable to contribute to Black culture due to the opportunity they can offer. We've seen rap music executives that know very little about Black culture managing rap artists. We see white directors who will never experience racism write and direct movies on Black people dealing with racism. However, this doesn't negate the fact, however, that some Blacks in positions of power take advantage of other Blacks, leaving some no choice but to turn to whites. Therefore, this is all the more reason a culture of guidelines and accountability should be implemented into Black society to differentiate those who are for and against Black progression. Number 2. Who wants to worry about a Black uprising? While some whites intellectually understand white supremacy, there are some who, due to a fear, don't want a Black uprising. Civil war often means families are torn apart and businesses being destroyed. Some whites understand logically that supporting Blacks by protesting, even if they don't want to, pales in comparison to dealing the full-out race war. Despite the media portrayal of angry Blacks, whites have never dealt with a daily potential threat of mobs of Blacks terrorizing them and possibly getting away with it in court. Blacks didn't lynch or create sundown towns or curfews for whites to abide by. The threat of a Black uprising, often portrayed by the media to incite fear, hasn't been seen or felt since the various slave insurrections hundreds of years ago. Many whites work downtown, in the inner city, or have businesses in the area with a good amount of Black residents in them. This is in contrast to the stereotypical suburban or lower-class white supremacists who is already prepared for a race war in their mind. Many whites feel that the media is using police shootings to incite a race war. These whites could have never spent time in these inner cities to understand the complexities of their issues and would be surprised to find out that the daily survival that comes with living in the inner city outweighs the thought of dealing with the white supremacists. In conclusion, no matter their intentions, there are some whites who would like to help out due to a fear of a possible race war. However, we are still unable to pinpoint the change in their minds of white people. Many feel that white oppression was a lot worse in the 50s and 60s, yet whites were not protesting then like they are now. The camera phone only confirmed what blacks were experiencing for the last 400 years and what the majority of white people have turned a blind eye to. What sparked the sudden change to compel whites to fight against white supremacy today? This we will have to review in a future video. Number 1. Minority by 2050. This year in Congress has seen the first female Muslim elected official and the first Egyptian elected judge in politics. During the 19th and 20th century, immigration was not a factor in fighting white supremacy due to a low volume of immigrants coming into the country. Don't be fooled by the build the wall chants from Trump supporters or the fact that Obama has deported more illegals than any other president in U.S. history. Still, a little more than 1 million people migrate into this country every year. Though small in numbers compared to whites, immigrants come into this country with a sense of culture. This sense of culture translates into community building and cooperative economics. While blacks and whites are worried about a race war and Donald Trump, immigrants are establishing businesses and soon running for political positions in their communities. Immigrants and the children of immigrants can understand the freedom that comes with living in America that they may not have in the country of their origin. As politicians become more diverse, and as long as the politicians keep their culture intact and not assimilate completely into white supremacist ideologies, slowly but surely this will lead to eradicating white supremacy not only nationally but globally. However, it can be safe to assume that as whites become a minority, white supremacy will do whatever it takes to preserve their bloodlines. This can mean domestic terror attacks, changes in laws to suit their survivals, and more. In conclusion, we leave the intention of whites fighting white supremacy up to you. We presented the case as to why whites would now and in the future fight white supremacy. You, the viewer or the jury, use your own discernment based off this information and how you perceive your everyday reality. However, if you find that some have good intentions, would you be willing to work with them? Or do you feel that they are more effective fighting white supremacy on their own? Until next time, think independently and strive for intelligence. Your future depends on it.